Las Vegas, 1972.
Cameras flashing, voices overlapping, rumors swirling like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know the truth about drugs, Priscilla, and whether the king had finally lost control. Then, Elvis leaned into the microphone and said 12 words that silenced every critic in America. What he said that day still echoes decades later. September 4th, 1972, Las Vegas Hilton International Ballroom. The room was packed with over 250 reporters, the air thick with hairspray, cigarette smoke, and tension. Every flashbulb was a bullet. Every voice wanted blood. Elvis Presley walked in wearing a black cape lined with red satin. The crowd gasped. Cameras popped like thunder. He sat down slowly, adjusting the mic, his diamond cross glinting under the hot lights. For weeks, the tabloids had called him a mess. Pills, women, anger, exhaustion. They said the king was losing his throne. But tonight, Elvis looked ready to reclaim it. He smiled faintly. "Y'all sure make a man feel loved," he said. Laughter scattered through the crowd, but beneath it, something darker lingered. Curiosity sharpened like a knife. A voice from the back cut through the chaos. "Elvis, are the rumors true?" Heads turned toward the young man who dared ask it. Elvis didn't flinch. He leaned forward just enough for the mic to catch his slow drawl. "Depends which ones you mean, son." The room erupted. Reporters laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was tension breaking for half a heartbeat. Behind the humor sat a storm waiting to explode. He crossed his hands on the table, eyes scanning the crowd. You could almost hear his pulse in the hush that followed. He'd been hunted by gossip for months, and now he was face to face with it. He took a slow breath, voice dropping an octave. "You want the truth?" Silence. His tone shifted from playful to deadly calm. "Let's start there." You could feel every reporter tighten their grip on a pen. This wasn't the smooth, laughing Elvis they expected. This was something else, colder, sharper, deliberate. The king wasn't here to entertain. He was here to fight for his name. He tilted his head slightly, eyes gleaming. "I've been quiet long enough. Maybe it's time y'all heard it from me." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd like wind through dry grass. He let them murmur. Then stillness. The camera flashes began again, slower this time, like thunder rolling after lightning. How would you face the world if it twisted your story? Could you keep calm under fire? Elvis adjusted his mic again, voice steady now. "All right, boys," he said softly. "Let's talk about what's real." The room leaned in. He had them. Every rumor, every headline, every whisper. All about to be destroyed, live on tape. The next question came like a spark in a dry forest. A British journalist shouted from the third row, his accent slicing through the air. "People say you've become unstable. That fame's ruined you." For a heartbeat, Elvis didn't move. The clicking of camera shutters slowed, then stopped altogether. He lifted his gaze and met the man's eyes. "I've been called worse," he said, voice low. "Buy better." Laughter flickered across the room, but it died fast. Everyone could feel what was hiding beneath that calm tone. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You folks love stories more than truth. You stop touring to rest, they say you're dying. You lose a little weight, they say you're using. You fall in love, they say you're cheating." Every sentence landed like a drumbeat. Boom, boom, boom. The reporter tried to speak again, but Elvis didn't give him space. "You ever notice," he continued, "how nobody writes when things are good? Guess good news don't sell magazines." A few reporters nodded quietly. Even they knew it was true. He picked up a glass of water. The ice clinked. "I ain't perfect," he said softly. "Never claimed to be. But I ain't what they say either." Flashbulbs burst again, painting him in brief flashes of white light. In that moment, the king looked less like a star and more like a man trapped inside his own legend. "You ever have people talk about you like they built your life for you?" he asked. "Feels strange, don't it? Reading about yourself like you're some kind of stranger." Someone near the front whispered, "He's really doing it." He ignored the noise. "When you've been blessed the way I have, you try not to complain. But sometimes, Silence makes a liar out of you. He set the glass down gently, the tap echoing through the room. I've spent half my life singing, for people who never met me, he said. Guess that's the danger of being a dream. They stop seeing you as a person. His accent thickened. You want the truth about me? I get tired. I get scared. I miss home. The words hung there like smoke. Nobody moved. Even the hotel's air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he leaned into the mic again, his voice steady now, the calm after a storm. You want to know who I really am? He paused just long enough for every ear in the room to catch the next sentence. Keep those recorders running. A nervous chuckle swept through the crowd, half admiration, half disbelief. He smiled faintly, the kind that hides more pain than joy. 'Cause tonight, I'm talking the story back. The flash of a camera froze him mid-smile, the defiance of a man reclaiming his name. Why do we believe rumors faster than kindness? What's the cost of fame when truth becomes entertainment? He took a slow breath, leaned back in his chair, and whispered to himself, "All right then, let's begin." The crowd erupted again, dozens of pens scratching across paper as if trying to capture lightning before it vanished. Elvis looked down at the microphones clustered like snakes in front of him. "Let's talk about the boy from Tupelo," he said. "The one y'all forgot." And with that, he pointed the conversation straight back to where it all began. His roots, his hunger, his truth. The tension in the room was electric, the kind of silence that burns your ears. Elvis shifted forward, resting both hands on the table. "Write this down," he said, his voice steady but sharp. "There's not enough money or pills in the world to make me forget where I came from." You could almost hear the scratching of pens stop. He glanced at the cameras, his gaze heavy. "I grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi," he said. "We had one pair of shoes between two boys, and a roof that leaked when it rained. My mama used to hum gospel while patching that roof. We didn't have much, but we had music, and that made us rich." The room softened. Even the journalists who'd come to corner him were suddenly leaning in. "That boy from Tupelo didn't dream of fame," Elvis said. "He dreamed of eating." Laughter flickered through the press room, but this time, it wasn't mocking. It was real, warm, human. He nodded slowly. "Y'all write about mansions, cars, and glitter suits, but you never write about the part that matters, the heart." He paused, letting the quiet stretch. Then his tone changed, lower, more controlled. "You call me arrogant, but if being proud of hard work is arrogance, then I'll wear that crown gladly." He stood suddenly, chair scraping against the floor. Cameras flashed in bursts of white. "You say I'm out of touch. You say I forgot who I am." His voice rose, full of power now, the same tone that once filled arenas. "But here's what you forget. I'm still the boy who sang for nickels outside a barbershop." Each word hit like a drumbeat. He leaned closer to the front row, eyes sharp. "Fame don't erase where you came from. It just makes folks forget to ask." A hush fell over the room again. The same reporters who'd come hungry for blood now looked almost guilty. Then softer. "But that's all right, because when people start writing your story for you..." He stopped, tapping the microphone gently. "You take the pen back." He slammed his hand lightly on the table, not in anger, in punctuation. "So here's my story," he said, his voice clear as glass. "And it's mine alone." A murmur swept through the crowd. Someone whispered, "He's rewriting history right now." Elvis smiled faintly. "No," he said, "I'm tellin' the truth. Always been more interestin' than fiction." He took a sip of water, the glass trembling in his hand. "When I was a kid, people told me I'd never be nothin'. When I made it, they said I'd lost my way. Funny how you can't win with folks who never believed in you either way." He let out a quiet chuckle that carried more sadness than humor. "You all want a headline? Here it is. I'm still human. That's the story." The silence that followed was heavy, reverent. Even the air felt slower. A reporter in the corner whispered to another, "I didn't expect to feel sorry for him." Elvis caught it, but he didn't react. He just straightened his jacket and said softly, "Don't feel sorry for me. Just remember I'm more than what you print. Then he smiled, that half-smile America had fallen in love with years ago, and said, I ain't mad at ya. I just wish y'all would write with the same grace I try to sing with. The entire room seemed to breathe again. He turned slightly, eyes glimmering under the lights. You all ever had to fight for your own truth? He asked. Feels lonely, doesn't it? He paused. The quiet that followed felt sacred. A church without walls. Good, he said finally. Then maybe you'll understand why I'm speaking tonight. Flashbulbs erupted again, but this time, they weren't hunting scandal. They were capturing a man on fire, not angry, but alive. Would you have the courage to speak like that, knowing the world was waiting to twist your words? Elvis took one last sip, then set the glass down with a soft clink. All right, he said. Now let's finish this proper. He looked up, steady and unshaken, ready to deliver the line that would echo for half a century. The room was holding its breath. Every light felt hotter, every second louder. Then a voice from the back dared to interrupt. Elvis, what do you say to those who think you've lost touch? He smiled, that sideways grin that always hit a storm. Lost touch? He repeated softly. I shake more hands in a week than they'll shake in a lifetime. Laughter rippled through the room again. But this time Elvis didn't join in. He leaned toward the microphones, eyes fixed, expression still. You all came here for truth, right? He took a breath. The pause was long enough for a camera to refocus. Then he spoke, slow and clear, each syllable cutting the air like a blade. Rumors are just words from people too afraid to live their own truth. 12 words. That's all it took. The ballroom froze. Every camera stopped mid-click. Every pen stopped mid-stroke. It was as if sound itself had forgotten how to exist. For almost 10 seconds, nobody moved. Then one flash popped. Another followed. Reporters stared at him like they'd witnessed lightning strike the same spot twice. Elvis didn't move. He sat back, breathing evenly, gaze steady. That's all I got to say on that, he said quietly. No brevado. No teatrix. Just truth delivered like a verdict. In the corner, an older journalist whispered, he just rewrote every headline. The silence broke into a slow clap. A single reporter in the front row started it. Then another joined. Then the whole room rose in applause. Not for fame, not for spectacle, for honesty. Elvis lowered his eyes, shaking his head gently, almost embarrassed. Didn't mean to start a revival, he joked softly. But the warmth in his voice betrayed how much it meant to be understood for once. He leaned back toward the mic again. See, folks, he said, truth ain't fancy. It don't wear sequins. It just stands there, naked and stubborn, waitin' for someone brave enough to say it out loud. A reporter near the back asked, so what happens now? Elvis smiled faintly. Now, he said, maybe y'all print something worth rememberin'. Laughter mixed with applause again. This time it felt different, genuine, human. He continued, look, I don't blame you for the stories.
Eu guta fil pages, I guta fil sungs.
But maybe tonight we both learned the same thing, words have power. So let's use them better. The crowd murmured agreement. The man they'd come to challenge had just turned the confrontation into communion. Elvis reached for the water glass again. His hands were steady now. I ain't perfect, he said softly. But at least I'm real. And real's enough for me. He glanced at the journalist who'd asked the question that started it all. What's your name, son? Robert, the young man stammered. Well, Robert, Elvis said, smiling kindly. Thank you for a skin. Sometimes it takes a brave fool to pull the truth out of a tired man. Laughter erupted again, gentler this time. The king had turned a firing squad into fellowship. He stood, stretching his shoulders, cape glimmering beneath the lights. Y'all take care of yourselves, he said. And remember, don't ever let someone else write your story. The applause that followed wasn't wild. It was reverent, the sound of respect replacing rumor. 12 words. That was all it took to change everything. Would you dare speak your truth if the whole world was waiting to twist it? As the clapping faded, Elvis whispered something no one heard until the bootleg recording surfaced years later. Maybe tonight. They finally saw me. The applause thundered through the Hilton's hallways as Elvis stepped off stage and into the narrow corridor behind the ballroom. Reporters were still talking, shouting, laughing, half in shock, half in admiration. Back here, the air felt cooler, quieter. The smell of coffee and camera flash powder faded into the soft hum of stage lights. Joe Esposito, his road manager and oldest friend, met him at the door. "You know you just broke the press, right?" he said, handing Elvis a towel. Elvis wiped his face, chuckled softly. "Good," he said. "Maybe they'll print something worth readin' for once." He dropped into the chair in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't the polished king from the stage. It was a tired man with a trembling smile. The bulbs above him buzzed. Sweat clung to his collar. For a moment he said nothing, just watched himself breathe. Then, quietly, "Mama told me the truth don't need a bodyguard." Joe leaned on the doorframe. "You sure that wasn't too much honesty for one night?" Elvis smiled. "Honesty's like gospel, Joe. It only hits hard if you need to hear it." He loosened the collar of his shirt, the cape sliding off his shoulders. Outside, applause still echoed through the carpeted hall like thunder fading across desert hills. He took a long sip of water and stared at the microphone sitting on the counter. A small silver one engraved Hilton Press Room, 1972. He tapped it once, the metal ringing softly. "All that noise, all those lights," he murmured. "And it comes down to one thing, a man and his voice." Joe nodded. "You sure gave em yours tonight." Elvis laughed quietly. "I didn't give em mine. I gave em the truth. That's rarer." The laughter faded. He looked down, rubbing his thumb along the microphone's edge. "You know, Joe, they came to see if I'd fall apart. But I think I reminded em I'm still standin'." He turned the microphone sideways, watching the reflection of the red stage lights flicker across the chrome. "Maybe that's all I ever needed to say." A faint cheer rose from beyond the door, 100 reporters clapping as if they just watched a concert instead of a press conference. Joe looked at him, half smiling. "They're still applaudin', eh?" Elvis shrugged. "Let 'em. Maybe they're clap-pin for themselves, for rememberin' what decency sounds like." He stood slowly, stretching his neck, the weight of exhaustion settling into his shoulders. The air in the room vibrated with the low hum of his words. Why do people only believe strength when it's shown through pain? He looked once more into the mirror, the performer, the man, the myth, all in the same reflection. "All right," he whispered. "Time to go be human again." He reached for the door, paused, then added softly, "Moma'd be proud tonight." Outside, flashbulbs burst one last time as the king stepped back into the noise. By sunrise, every newsroom in America had the same headline printed in bold: "Elvis Presley. Rumors are just words from people too afraid to live their own truth." The phone lines at the Hilton jammed before breakfast. Radio stations begged for comment. Journalists who'd mocked him hours earlier now called his interview the moment that silenced the tabloids. Hotel staff wheeled in stacks of newspapers to Elvis's suite. He scanned each front page with tired eyes, shaking his head. "They finally listened," he whispered. Across the Atlantic, the Times of London printed an editorial calling it a masterclass in calm defiance. In Tokyo, fans left white roses outside RCA's regional office. One note read, "Thank you for reminding us that truth still matters." By the afternoon, clips from the press conference played on every major network. Even reporters who hadn't attended replayed the audio. His tone, his timing, his control. The bootleg copy, captured on a handheld reel labeled Vegas Truth Tapes, 1972, spread like wildfire through radio DJs and collectors. Elvis refused all follow-up interviews. "I said what I meant," he told Joe Esposito. "Anything else would sound like rehearsing honesty." Instead, that night, he returned to the stage. The Hilton showroom was packed. 19,000 people holding their breath, waiting for the king who had just conquered gossip itself. The lights dimmed. He stepped forward in a white suit, the crowd roaring until he raised his hand for silence. "This song," he said softly, is for anyone who ever got talked about. Then he sang If I Can Dream. No theatrics, no big gestures. Just his voice, deep and cracked with emotion. When he hit the final line, while I can think, while I can talk, while I can stand, the audience erupted. But this applause was different. It wasn't for fame. It was for truth. Backstage, Charlie Hodgege caught his breath. You turned gossip into gospel out there." Elvis smiled faintly. "Nah, man. Just turned noise into silence for a minute." Letters flooded Graceland over the next month. Handwritten, typed, some smudged with tears. Fans called him brave. Parents wrote to thank him for teaching their kids dignity. One note, signed only Marie from Memphis, read, "I used to believe everything I read. After that night, I believe in people again." Decades later, when the Hilton remodeled the press room, the hotel manager insisted one wall remain untouched. A small brass plaque was mounted there, etched with Elvis's quote. "Here, Elvis Presley took back his story." Tourists still visit that hallway. Some stop to take pictures. Others stand quietly, listening to a faint recording of his voice playing on loop. "When lies define you, do you fight back or rise above?" The plaque reads underneath, engraved in smaller letters. Outside, the neon hum of Las Vegas hasn't changed much. But in that quiet corridor, the world still feels like it's listening. The king's words didn't just end rumors. They started a revolution in respect. 50 years later, that 12-word quote still circles the world. It appears on posters, murals, and stage walls. Rumors are just words from people too afraid to live their own truth. The grainy footage of that Las Vegas press room is played in documentaries and college lectures. You can see the sweat on his collar, the half-smile trembling at the corner of his mouth. But most of all, you can hear it, the calm in his voice when the world expected rage. Modern viewers are stunned by how gentle he sounds. There's no shouting, no bitterness, no fight left, only faith in truth. A radio historian once said, "That press conference was the last time a celebrity used silence as a weapon." Elvis didn't defend himself with anger. He dismantled lies with grace. At Graceland, near the grand staircase, sits a small glass case. Inside rests the same silver microphone from that Hilton ballroom. Etched beneath it are the words, "Las Vegas, September 4th, 1972, the day Elvis Presley took back his name." Fans line up quietly to see it. Some leave letters. Some whisper, "Thank you." One child once asked his mother, "Why do they keep this old mic?" She smiled. "Because that's the day the king told the truth." It's strange how one moment can rewrite a lifetime of noise. A man who was once trapped by rumors ended up remembered for honesty. People still debate what made that quote so powerful. Maybe it wasn't what he said, but how he said it. Calm, certain, like someone who'd finally stopped fighting and started accepting himself. Even today, social media posts repeat his line whenever scandal strikes another public figure. Rumors are just words. They write, sometimes not even realizing who said it first. And that's the legacy. The words outlived the man. Because the king didn't just defend himself that night. He gave everyone permission to stop apologizing for being human. When the applause faded, when the lights dimmed, Elvis walked away with something far greater than control of the headlines. He walked away with peace. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand tall and stay standing. When the noise fades, what story will the world tell about you? If the story moved you, share it with someone learning to rise above judgment. Elvis didn't need to scream to be heard. He just told the truth and let silence do the rest. Subscribe for more powerful untold stories about legends who proved that truth, once spoken, never dies.